Hi, this is the video for Daf Mem Aleph of Masechet Ketubot, page 41 of Masechet Ketubot. It is the last daf of this chapter, chapter 3, and we will be beginning chapter 4 next week, so congratulations on finishing this chapter. It was, as you probably know, a very, very difficult chapter with some very long sugyot. We've sort of moved on now. I hope you weren't scarred by them. Difficult subjects, and we're going to continue to talk in the beginning of the next chapter a few difficult subjects, including the rape and seduction issues. However, stay tuned. Please do not tune out, because Daf Mem Vav or so, page 46, we'll begin some fascinating discussions about husbands and wives, responsibilities husbands have to wives, responsibility wives have to husbands. I have been teaching at the yeshiva this year, at the conservative yeshiva, the CY, chapter 4 and 5, and it is some of the best material, some of my favorite material in the entire Talmud. So please stay tuned. There is some interesting material coming up. I wanted to just go over the Mishnah at the beginning of this page, because as has happened sometimes, it helps to clarify the basic laws of the Mishnah before we get onto the more complicated rules and discussions in the Talmud. The Mishnah refers to a very general principle that I think is very simple to understand. When a person confesses to a crime, admits to a crime, where there is no other evidence, this is not confession with witnesses, but where there is no other evidence, and he just admits to having committed a crime, he does not pay the fine, but he does pay the compensation. Okay? In Hebrew, the compensation is called mammon, money, and the fine is called knas, which still means fine. By the way, it comes from the Latin word, the same word we use in English today for census, knas. So the Mishnah says, ha'omer pititi et bito shoponi, somebody who I seduced someone's daughter. And now we know that he's going to be obligated for 3 payments: boshet, shame; pagam, blemish; and the knas, and the fine. So mishalem boshet upagam al pi atzmo, he pays blemish and embarrassment, shame, on his own admission. Why? Because they are compensation. And this makes perfect sense. If I diminish somebody else's value, either their social value or their physical value, then I have to compensate for that. The fact that I admitted to my crime makes no difference. They have suffered a real loss, and therefore I have to make compensation, even if I admitted to it without any other evidence. However, ve'ein meshalem haknas, they do not pay the fine. The idea here seems to be that the fine is not compensation. The fine is a penalty on me, to prevent me maybe from doing it again, to punish me. But since I admitted to doing that, then the fine doesn't apply, because look, if I hadn't admitted it, they wouldn't have gotten it anyway. So, the punishment doesn't apply when I admitted to my own crime. Okay, now the other categories are a little bit more complicated. For instance, ha'omer ganavti, somebody who says I stole, meshalem et hakeren al pi atzmo, he pays the principal on his own, and he doesn't pay the double or the quadruple or the quintuple payments on his own admission. That makes sense, because one is compensation, whereas the extra payments are penalties or fines. I want to get to the last category, haimit shori avdo shalponi. If my ox killed somebody's slave, I don't pay the 30 shekels I would owe. Now, this is a funny category, because it would seem that the 30 shekels I owe to the owner of that slave are compensation for the loss of his slave. They should be mammon. But the fact that the Torah says that that amount is set, it doesn't matter how much the slave is worth, makes it look like a fine. To the rabbis, a fine is something whose value is set. 50 shekels, 30 shekels, whatever it is, the value is predetermined, and it's not a quid pro quo compensation for the loss. So even though at its root I would imagine that 30 shekels is a compensation for the loss. The fact that it's determined mirosh, ahead of time, means that one does not make that payment if he admits to it, and he would only make that payment if there was real evidence against him.